Hi, I'm Dave Buerger and welcome to my bass chat. The acoustic bass guitar is a hybrid version of the upright bass and the acoustic guitar. Compared to its giant cousin, ABG's small body has a low volume output. It's hard to hear acoustically with a band. But don't underestimate this little beast. With a little help, ABG can be a tone monster, and it's much easier to move around. This video is about tracking the acoustic bass guitar, capturing its sound for recording and for live music production. This video is not about post-processing, which is overdubbing, mixing, mastering, and other things done after you've tracked or recorded the music. The examples I show you are just that. There's no one correct way to do it. What works for you depends on your particular environment, the requirements of the music, the acoustics of the room, and of course your musical tastes. These principles will help provide a platform for experimentation so you can discover what works best in your scenario. A critical factor for good tone is your musical instrument and of course how you play it. This Taylor AB1 acoustic bass guitar has an oversized body for a deep, woody, robust bass tone. It has labella, deep-talking black nylon tape-wound strings to sound more like an upright bass. Other strings, such as flat wounds or bronze phosphor round wounds, will produce dramatically different tones. Whatever strings you use, the principles I describe will still apply. With tracking, the biggest discovery you may find is hearing the tone of your bass for the very first time. Since the acoustic bass guitar has a low volume level, and since the sound holes are usually pointing away from your ears, tracking the bass is just about the only way to really hear yourself play the lovely tone of this instrument. Acoustic tracking uses a microphone to capture sound primarily from the ABG sound hole. These mics represent three common technologies: a large diaphragm condenser microphone, a small diaphragm condenser microphone, and a dynamic microphone. The large diaphragm condenser microphone is a two-bass Peluso 22251. The bass line you heard me play at the intro to this video was recorded with the Peluso mic. It has a nearly flat frequency response with 9 polar pattern selections. I use it to record ABG with a slightly narrowed, almost hypercardioid polar pattern to focus the sound captured from the hole. Next is the Telefunken M60 small diaphragm condenser mic. It's solid state with a cardioid capsule. Response is flat from 150 Hz to 70 kHz with a smooth, airy presence peak at 8 kHz, similar to the Neumann KM184. The M60 is an excellent mic for acoustic instruments like guitar and ABG. The Shure SM57 dynamic microphone is the gold standard for electric guitar and snare drum. It has a cardioid polar pattern and a big hump starting at 3.5 kHz with a rapid fall-off, not ideal for ABG. There are better quality dynamic mics for recording acoustic bass, like the Sennheiser MD421. But everybody has a 57 in the mic locker, so it's good to get a worst-case scenario. The SM57 provides serviceable results in case you're in a jam. So the magic formula for miking the acoustic bass guitar is putting them exactly where they sound the best. There is no magic formula. It's different than an acoustic guitar, for example, where you might put the mic 10 to 12 inches from where the fingerboard meets the sound hole. That always works. ABG is a lower register and it's quieter. Most of the tone comes from the sound hole, so that's where you should point the mic. Your ABG's projection characteristics will vary. With mine, I like to position the mic about 6 or 7 inches from the sound hole. It gives the tone space to bloom. I've tried close miking this bass, and the proximity effect makes that tone too muddy. Captions in the video will show you which mic is producing the sound at that moment. What you'll hear will be exactly what the mic is capturing. There's no EQ, no compression, no other effects that are added. This is a good point to pause the video and get some good earphones or playback system. You won't hear nuances through laptop speakers or earbuds. To my ears, the large diaphragm condenser has a fuller, rounder, richer tone. The small diaphragm condenser is tighter in the low end. The SM57 provides serviceable tone. And by the way, each mic is feeding directly into a Zoom F8 multi-track field recorder. It's terrific for recording at gigs, and the preamps are very good quality. Sound is recorded directly to an SD card. A couple of other ideas for mic tracking. You need to maintain a precise distance between the bass and the microphone to maintain level input. Keeping still is hard to do in a live performance setting. If you can't sit or stand, consider using an H-clamp for stationary mic placement. It clamps onto the body and lets you place the mic in a fixed spot. I tried an H-clamp with my bass and discovered the mic was too close for good tone. Your results may vary depending on the type of mic and bass. Another miking issue is the sound hole where all the tone emits. If you're playing at a gig, the volume coming out of the bass is going to be low. It's going to be hard to mic. And it's going to be impossible to mic if you have to plug the hole to eliminate feedback. This is a feedback buster, and it's a pretty important tool when you're playing ensemble. It fits into the sound hole just like that, plugs it up, and prevents feedback. The feedback buster is an essential tool for playing ensemble. But if you plug the hole, you can't use a mic. So this leads us to our next topic, which is recording through a piezo pickup and DI. ABGs typically use a piezoelectric pickup. A low-quality piezo can sound sterile or brittle when you're recording through the pickup and a DI, or sending the signal to an amp in a cabinet. I upgraded the stock piezo to a Fishman VTB and Matrix. Other brands like LR Bags or K&K Pure can provide equally good results. If you use a piezo, make sure it's a good one, and don't forget to use a fresh battery. In this demo, the pickup signal feeds into a radial JDV active direct box, and then into the Zoom F8 recorder. The radial passes a clear, uncolored tone. It records the pure tone of the bass, unlike some DI boxes that color the tone. Coloration can sound great with electric bass, but it can mask harmonics and woody, complex, airy tones from an acoustic instrument. Also, consider EQ provided by an onboard preamp. My preference is to set onboard EQ the way the bass sounds best through a neutrally voiced amp. Start with the EQ flat, usually in the center position, then experiment cutting or boosting the treble and the bass. This is a stack knob EQ, so the bass is on the bottom, treble's on the top. Center position is neutral. Also with ABG, I find setting the onboard volume in the middle works best. Setting it higher tends to overdrive the inputs and distorts the track tone. Let's listen to how the ABG's piezo and clean DI sound with variations of the onboard EQ. I'm going to boost the bass just a little bit. Now I'm going to boost the treble just a little bit. So both bass and treble are slightly boosted. I'm going to drop the treble back to neutral and still have the bass slightly boosted. Now I'm going to drop the bass back to neutral. Treble and bass are both at neutral. Here's that feedback. That can be a bear when you're on the stage of recording, so you have to watch that. And that's one good reason why having that sound plug can be very, very useful. Now let's hear how the ABG sounds with piezo and a tube-based preamp and DI. I mentioned earlier how coloration can be bad for ABG, but sometimes it can be very good, especially with a tube preamp. Many of you love what analog tube technology does for music, and with the right tube preamp, you can magically transform ABG's tone into amazing output. The external tube preamp also solves the problem of sterile brittle tone from a piezoelectric pickup. For this demo, I'll use a Noble tube preamp DI. I'll leave the onboard bass EQ flat and change the Noble EQ knobs that add various amounts of bass and treble. I'll also flip the Noble's low cut switch, which gives a tighter bass tone. Using this switch and boosting bass is very useful for ABG, which ordinarily can sound flabby with too many low frequencies. We'll start this with bass and treble completely off, so you'll hear the pure sound of the bass, no EQ, with only the tube applied to that tone. The volume knob, by the way, affects output to the amplifier and speaker cabinet. This is what affects the sound going into the DI, which is going right into the recorder. All right, let's make a change. I'm going to add a little bit of bass in here. We still have, the low cut is still off, so you're hearing the full frequency range. We'll put the bass up to Now let's boost the treble a little bit. In this case, I'm going to put the treble right at the same setting, and what this does is it produces a low cut right in the middle of the frequencies, kind of a smiley face tone. You may like it, you may not. Now I'm going to show you how this sounds with the low cut on, and I'm going to boost the bass even more, take the treble off just a little bit, and let you hear how that sounds. And just for one other variation of this, I'm going to add a little bit of bass on the onboard EQ, keeping in mind that you can gain stage this. The number of possibilities are infinite, but you can use the gain staging with the preamp on the instrument as well as the external preamp for some pretty good results. I find that this particular setting smooths the bass out just a little bit. The quiet ABG must be amplified for live sound. The choice of cabinet and amp is critical to let the tone of the ABG shine through with clarity. And if you love the tone of your cab, why not mic it for recording? This cabinet is a neutral sounding barefaced super midget. It has a 12-inch woofer and special electronic crossover to the tweeter for an ultra smooth, full range sound. I position the crossover dial right in the middle for a blend of the old school and modern sound. The amp you use for ABG is critical. Many of the integrated preamps and amps are colored in a way that's good for electric bass, particularly for louder styles of music like rock and roll, which isn't so good for acoustic bass. Use an amp without coloration. You might check out some of the amps that upright bass players like to use. For example, this EA Micro from Euphonics Audio is a really good one. There are also others from Walter Woods, Claris, Acoustic Image, Phil Jones, and some others. Room acoustics dramatically affect cabinet tone. So does placement of the microphone. In my home studio, I prefer to use a large diaphragm condenser about 7 inches in front of the cab for a touch of room ambiance. Now, my particular room is fairly dead sounding, so there's not too much ambiance, but I'll use what I can get. For this demo of miking the cab, I'm feeding a signal from the Noble Tube preamp into a standalone amplifier by RAD Engineering based on the ICE 1000 power module. It puts 525 watts into the cab at 8 ohms. Clean, clear tone with plenty of headroom. This cab miking demo will begin with the external preamp set neutral, bass and treble. The bass preamp is also set to neutral. All you're hearing is the tone going through the tube, right into the amp, and into the cab, mic'd with a large diaphragm condenser. All right, let's boost the bass a bit. Maybe the treble a little bit too, why not? Now I'm going to flip the low cut switch on and boost the bass. And I'm going to decrease the volume here a bit to reduce the output from to the speaker cabinet. I should mention that in the final recording that you'll hear in the video, I'll be leveling all the volume outputs to be the same. As you know, when you hear something louder, it tends to sound better. So I don't want to put any undue influence on any one particular style of recording or capturing the sound. So here we go. Last but not least is blended tracking. This occurs in post-production using your digital audio workstation, or DAW. The blend consists of mixing various inputs that you have previously tracked into one integrated signal. Elements could include 2 or more of everything I've demonstrated: different microphones, different DIs, different mic cabinets, different EQ settings or effects on same applied either to the recorded signal or in post. In this demo, I'll play the same walking bass line with the Noble Tube preamp using one fixed setting. Captions will show you how the blend changes: 1/3 DI, 2/3 cabinet, half and half, 2/3 DI, 1/3 cabinet. There'll be no other EQ applied in the post. To wrap my bass chat, I hope the principles in this video help you achieve your tonal goals as a musician or recording engineer. For this small instrument packs big potential, the acoustic bass guitar.